Hey everyone, welcome to Life After Work. This is Solomon. This is some more of my mock-up. I found some video, but it just wasn't very good. I decided to just go ahead and just bring it up to date right now. Now this is not going to be perfect from this point forward. I have been diagnosed with chronic general neuropathy, which means basically the nerves in my body are, I don't know, degenerating, whatever. I can do a lot of physical therapy, maybe able to take some medication, slow it all down, but right now things don't work that well. However, I can do the big jobs, I think, and this is one of them. Now, I've talked about this, well, I don't know if I ever published it. I've done a lot of video, and my brain doesn't really connect what I've actually done versus what I tape. These gun mounts are absolutely awful. Now, when I say awful, the flash on them is so bad that it's going to take a lot of time to get it off. Well, you know, even though I don't have a lot of use of my hands, I can hold a file, and I think I can do this, so I'll take care of that. And I put them all up here just kind of in place just to see what they look like. The barrels and the bags, that's something I got to think about, because I can take the barrels right out of the kit and maybe be able to do something with them. So what does that mean? Let's see. This is a barrel with a gun bag, and I have to cut the barrel off, drill out the gun bag, put in the brass barrels. I gotta tell you, that's kind of tedious. So I'm thinking about alternative ways to do that. Well, what if I went ahead and glued, let me just try one here. What if I went ahead and glued the styrene version in there and put all of them in like in one of these, and then cut the barrel off, and then set up a jig so that I don't have to worry so much about my hands, that I could drill into those bags and put the brass barrels in. Well, that's kind of what I'm wanting to do. Fallback position, okay, let's don't do any upgrade. Let's just really sand and file and prepare the styrene, even on these tips out here of the barrel, and you probably won't be able to see this, but the tips out here, just square them off real well, take a really fine drill bit and drill the barrels out. When they're painting, maybe no one will know. So I'm looking at options, but right now I'm thinking I want to file everything down, get everything fitted, glued together, and by the way, I've got a lot of etched brass I could do on this, but I don't think I can do it. We'll see. We'll see what I can do and what I want to do, and I can always try it, and if it works, glue it on. But I'm not sure how that'll work. So anyway, I've got some options and a lot of cleanup, and I really don't think that my nerve problem will cause me to not be able to clean it up. So we'll see. Anyway, I've just looking at possibilities, and quite frankly, right now I think it's looking pretty good. I want you to take a look at just one of the pieces that I have to take off of here, and it's this one right here. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that on the camera, but everything you see there all around this is flash. All of that's flash, and every one of these pieces are surrounded by this flash. I've got to cut these pieces off, and I will do that right now. You've seen pieces cut off. Now, there's a danger with that much flash, and there's not much of a gate, that you'll damage the piece when you cut it, because you can't really see just because there's so much of that flash. I cut real close to the sprue. I end up basically with this. I mean, look at that. That's absolutely ridiculous. Now, another problem is that You think you can just look at that and it's real thin, so you can just cut the flash off and everything will be cool. But the flash has literally distorted the piece that it's on. So what I've got to do is to very, very carefully cut it so that I don't actually cut the piece, because it still needs to fit on the model. And once I get the big chunks cut off, now I have to work on the little chunks, and that takes a lot of sanding. The surfaces aren't flat for gluing. There are a lot of seam lines. You'll see the seam lines on the side, and this is a tiny piece. Now fortunately this is big enough I can use my thumb and index finger, because I can't really grip anything very well, and I use two hands because I have spasms that will cause me to throw this across the room. So that said, when all is said and done, you get it cleaned up and it will fit in fairly nicely. But it takes quite a bit of sanding, and of course I use my favorite smoother and sander. You guys have seen this before, and that has pretty well removed all the unwanted stuff on that. Now I got to put the other ear out here. Now, fit and finish on this. This is the bottom piece glued in. Look at that. That is awful. And it's put in correctly. There's just no way that it's going to fit perfect. They're not meant to go together perfectly. However, they should. So I'm going to have to, and this is on the bottom. It's not going to show, but it's going to drive me nuts. So I will fill some of these really bad spots very carefully. I'll just do it with a toothpick and take a cotton swab and smooth it out, just to make it appear as though it looks better. So anyway, this is what I'm working on. I'm working on the 16-inch guns, and as you can see, I have a lot of the parts on this now, on this particular mount. The barrels aren't in, they're just sitting there. I am going to align the barrels. I'll make me a little jig so that they'll be perfectly lined up, and then I'll use that same jig for the other two guns. I'm going to glue them in just like this. Now the brass barrels that go on here appear to be smaller than these styrene, but I'm going to put this in, I'm going to glue them in good and tight, and I'm going to cut all the barrels off at the same time. I can't hold those tiny pieces. I just can't do it. So I'm going to let the turret hold those tiny pieces, and my jig be how I drill the holes in the center and how I put in the new brass barrels. Got a lot of little details to put on it yet. I've got two more pieces on the top of this, maybe three, and I don't know what I'm going to do about the ladders yet, because those are photo etch and they're very tiny. As you can see, they go on either side of each of these barrels, and they're just very tiny. Then there's one right here. So I'm going to have to take a look at that. The entrance to this gun mount is underneath here, and of course it's not going to be detailed. You're not going to see it, so that's not a problem. There are no doors or hatches or anything to put on this one. Everything is accessed all the way down to the bottom of the ship from the inside, and you have to go underneath the skirt to do that. Okay, well I'll slip this into the next video somewhere and we'll move on. Let's pull this up like this. Give it a chance to focus. Now if you'll look at that, you'll maybe be able to notice that the two halves of the mold were shifted just a fraction of a millimeter. That means that mating surface on the shock bag isn't lined up, so it isn't a flat surface. You'll also notice there's a little bit of PE in there, and I'll tell you a little secret. That little bit of PE right there is not going to go on the gun. It's covered up completely by that flange. The flange isn't flat anyway, so I've got to do a lot of filing on it. And that's whether I cut the barrels off or not, just to get the bags on straight and correct. If you get a mold that, you know, the two halves of the mold are not perfectly aligned, then you're going to have a real problem, because this is exactly what I have here. It's got to be worked on. So anyway, that's what I'm working on right now, and I will be skipping these little bits of PE. They're fiddly anyway, and I'm just not going to put them on. I have one more thing on the 16-inch guns that I want to point out. Well, a couple of things actually. First of all, I'm getting the details on them. I put the kit barrels on it. Now, this is part of the things that I'm doing to help myself steady up. According to the instructions, I'm supposed to cut the bags off, drill holes in them, glue the barrel in it, glue it on the gun. I've decided to glue all three barrels with bags onto the gun. I'm going to build a jig so that I can take my fine saw and cut all three barrels off at the same time. Take a file and file the bag smooth at the same time. Then I'm building another jig so that I can run my drill bit into it at the same angle on each barrel and put my brass barrels on, but the jig will hold the brass barrels, so they will be absolutely straight and square to the gun. It was virtually impossible to get these plastic ones without grinding a lot of the plastic off the bags, because it's such bad injection molding. The molds weren't perfectly aligned. So that's one thing I'm going to do. Now, if you remember, I had the issue about the order to do things in. And the problem with this was, if you went by the original instructions, literally one of the first steps would be to put the guns on the main deck. And they had a way that you could put it on there and you ran a thing from inside the ship up into it. If you did that, once you glued the deck down to the ship, you couldn't get them back off. I want to be able to take these guns off, turn them, do whatever I want to with them after the model is done. But the main thing is, I don't want to put them on until at least up to the 01 level, main deck down, is all painted out. The wood deck is on, all of the details are on. Then I want to put the two main deck guns on. Well, I've worked out a way to do that. First of all, this came with a hole in the bottom. Now that hole could be adjusted, but I didn't want to adjust it too much. So I got a piece of tubing, styrene tubing, that perfectly fits that hole. I will glue that into the hole. I'll cut it off. And then I got another piece of tubing that has an ID the same as the OD of the other piece of tubing, so it flies in nice and tight. I'm going to cut this off and glue it to the underside of the main deck with some supports on it, so that at any time I can take the guns on or off the ship and they will turn any way I want to turn them. So that's my solution for that. I'm going to go ahead now and just glue this piece, cut off a piece, probably about that long. Doesn't need to be too long. What's that, about an inch? Maybe a little more. Glue that to the underside of the deck with some styrene supports on four sides so that it won't wobble around or break loose. I will cut this piece off, glue it to the gun. This can sit over here on the workbench till I'm ready to put the guns on. I have to paint them, detail them, finish them up, do everything I can do to them. This part goes to the underside of the deck. I'll do that on two pieces. Now the third piece is the gun on top of the 01 level. Well, I can't, and let me show you how this works. That won't go any further than the main deck. Well, what I can do here is simply put my drill bit here, drill straight down through the main deck. Then I don't need any supports for this. I've got 2 levels it glues to. So I can put that down in there, cut it off flush with the gun mount, and then do with the gun just like I did before, and that's take some of this styrene, put it underneath, and I'm finished. So this is going to prove to be a good solution, I think. It's good and tight. These 2 pieces of styrene fit together perfectly. There's no wobble, there's no moving around, but I can easily turn them. So basically, you know, the ship with the guns on it, the big guns, let's say, are going to look pretty good. And I'm moving ahead with the build. So got that to do, got this to do. This one back here doesn't have as much detail on it as the others do. So I'm gonna work on those until I get the 16-inch guns done, and then move on to fixing some other problems, finishing some other things. So that's my solution. A couple of pieces of tubing, one fits inside the other, cut them off to length, I'm done. Alright, let's get this video posted, and let me just say right now, for all the winners of the giveaway, congratulations. I've heard from 4 of them so far. I've already bought their prizes. I haven't told them what I've got them, but they have told me general criteria of what they could use. I hope I can satisfy them all. 2 more, I'm waiting on railroads and cars and trucks. Either way, that's not a problem, because I'm pretty sure I can satisfy those fairly easily and very satisfactory.